My name is Brittany Ward, 31 years old. The invitation to the country club lunch hadn't felt like an invitation at all. It was a command. Mom had said, "You need to network properly. Meet people who can help you find a real career." Real career. The words rattled around in my head even now like an accusation, as if the past 6 years of my life had been little more than an elaborate dress-up game. I stood at the entrance of the club, tugging at the hem of my vintage Levi's and wishing for once that my hoodie could act like armor instead of fabric. White sneakers scuffed from late nights at the studio, hair tied back loosely. Comfortable, practical, exactly what I'd wear when I was cutting patterns or testing fabric durability. I knew the look clashed violently with the scene in front of me. Women in polished Chanel suits, diamond brooches glittering beneath the warm chandeliers, voices rising in smooth, careful laughter. Mom spotted me and froze. The faint smile on her lips hardened the moment her gaze swept my outfit. "That's what you're wearing," she hissed. Her voice caught somewhere between disbelief and embarrassment. I shrugged. "I'm comfortable." "You look—" She glanced around, lowering her voice, homeless. "Brittany, this is a professional lunch." Her hand fluttered nervously at her pearls, the same way it always did when she thought she was losing control of a scene. I had the sudden urge to turn around and walk out, but I didn't. Not this time. I followed her into the dining room, the carpet muffling my footsteps, but not the pounding in my chest. Her friends were already at the table. Catherine Ashford, head of the Junior League. Diana Morrison, wife of a luxury dealership magnate. Patricia Chin, the sleek corporate lawyer. Women with practiced smiles and eyes sharp enough to cut glass. Mom's voice brightened artificially as we approached. "This is my daughter Brittany," she said, but her tone carried apology instead of pride. "She's between opportunities right now." My jaw clenched. "I run my own company," I corrected quietly, careful not to sound defensive. Mom's laugh was light dismissive. "A clothing thing. She makes dresses in her apartment." Heat rose in my cheeks. "I design sustainable fashion. We manufacture ethically in Portugal and Guatemala." "How nice," Catherine smiled. Her lips curving, but her eyes cool. "A hobby business." "It's not a hobby," I said firmly. "Of course not, dear," Diana cooed, reaching over to pat my hand. "But have you thought about a real career? My husband's company is always looking for administrative assistants." I forced myself to take a slow sip of water, the chill sliding down my throat like a blade. My mother, sensing the silence, filled it eagerly. She launched into her usual performance, recounting my education at Parsons, my promise as a designer, the tragedy of me not working for a famous fashion house. "She had such potential," Mom said, shaking her head. "But now she's struggling with this little startup that hasn't gone anywhere." My pulse quickened. I could hear the faint clink of forks and glasses around us, the genteel murmur of nearby tables. Everyone so composed, so certain of the rules of their world, and me sitting in jeans carrying a truth none of them wanted to hear. "We did $4.7 million in revenue last year," I said quietly. Mom laughed. "Brittany, don't exaggerate." She turned to her friends. "She works out of her apartment. I work out of a 12,000 square foot studio in Brooklyn. I have 34 employees." Patricia's brow arched. For a moment, just a flicker, there was curiosity. "That's impressive for a small operation." Mom cut in instantly. "It's not sustainable. She's burning through savings. I keep telling her to apply to real fashion houses." Her words landed like they always did, blunt, humiliating, rehearsed. I'd heard this monologue at Christmas, at Thanksgiving, even at my cousin's wedding. Always the same refrain: my work wasn't work. My company wasn't real. I wanted to scream, to shove proof in their faces, to tell them about the late nights, the numbers, the sacrifices. But something deeper stopped me. A cold recognition they didn't want proof. They wanted their narrative to stay intact. Mom lifted her glass of wine, her smile tightening, unaware of the storm building just beneath my silence. She thought she'd won this round, that once again she'd managed to frame me as the directionless daughter in need of saving. But I could feel it. Something was shifting. A reckoning was coming, and this time she wouldn't be able to dismiss it with a laugh. The server poured water into crystal glasses, the steady stream almost absurd against the crackling tension at our table. I could feel Catherine's polite smile faltering her eyes, darting between me and my mother as if unsure whose version of me to believe. I set my glass down carefully. "We did $4.7 million in revenue last year. That's not a hobby." Patricia tilted her head, intrigued, despite herself. 4.7. With what overhead? Before I could answer, Mom let out that lilting laugh, the one I hated most. Brittany, stop. She exaggerates. She still works out of her tiny apartment. I looked directly at Patricia. I own a 12,000 square foot studio in Brooklyn, 34 employees, a full supply chain ethical manufacturing partners in Portugal and Guatemala. For a moment, the words seemed to hang in the air, impossible to reconcile with the hoodie and scuffed sneakers in front of them. Patricia's eyes narrowed, not in scorn, but in calculation. That's more than a hobby. Unsustainable mom snapped, clinging to her version of reality like a lifeline. She's burning through whatever savings she has left. I keep telling her to apply for real jobs, but she won't listen. Her voice rose slightly sharp enough that nearby tables turned their heads. I wanted to shrink to disappear, but something inside me hardened instead. A familiar numbness, like slipping into armor I'd worn too many times. "Why do you assume I'm failing?" I asked softly. "Because I know you," she said, eyes flashing. "You've always been impulsive, dreaming big, chasing fantasies. This," she gestured vaguely toward me, my clothes, my silence. "This is just another phase." Her friends nodded, murmuring agreement, as though my mother's version of me was fact carved in stone. I thought of the nights I'd stayed up until dawn, perfecting patterns of the first time a stranger bought one of my pieces, of the moment I signed the deed for the studio, with trembling hands. None of it seemed to matter here. I could have pulled out my phone right then, shown them the deed, the mortgage statements, the employee roster, the endless emails from customers on our waiting list. I could have shoved proof in their faces until their manicured nails cracked under the weight of it. But I didn't. Because I knew something now that I hadn't known 6 years ago. People who decide you're failing don't want proof that you're succeeding. They want to be right more than they want the truth. So I sat back, folding my hands in my lap, letting them believe what they wanted. My silence wasn't defeat, it was defiance. Catherine leaned in, lowering her voice, as if she were about to offer me wisdom. "The problem with young people today is that they want everything too fast. You never learned patience, Brittany. You can't skip the steps it takes to build stability." I almost laughed. 16-hour days for 6 years, but sure, I was impatient. Diana chimed in with her well-worn anecdote. "My daughter once wanted to be a photographer. We convinced her to go to law school instead. She's much happier now, stable, respected." She smiled as if I should thank her for the cautionary tale. Mom pounced on the thread. "Exactly. That's what I keep telling Brittany. Get a stable job, save money. Then in 10 years, if she wants to play designer as a side project..." I am financially secure. I cut in sharper than I intended. The table went silent. My mother's lips parted, then pressed together in a hard line. She searched my face for weakness, for the cracks she was certain would appear if she pressed harder. "Secure," she repeated finally, her voice dripping disbelief. "Darling, you can't even afford proper clothes." Her words should have gutted me the way they had 100 times before, but instead a strange calm settled over me. I realized she wasn't fighting me. She was fighting the idea of me, the version of her daughter who needed saving, who made her look noble in her friends' eyes. And that version of me was about to shatter in ways none of them expected. "Mrs. Ashford." The voice came from just behind me, young, nervous, almost trembling. I turned to see a girl in her early 20s, dark hair pulled neatly into a bun, clutching a leather-bound notebook to her chest. She wore a simple blazer, business casual, but her eyes glittered with recognition as they landed on me. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," she said, cheeks flushed, "but I had to. Your daughter's work is incredible." Mom blinked. "Excuse me." The girl's gaze never wavered from me. "I've been following your brand for years. I'm actually wearing one of your pieces right now." She opened her blazer to reveal a sharply tailored jacket in organic wool, one of our spring collection bestsellers. I knew the cut, instantly knew how many late nights had gone into refining the structure until it sat perfectly on any frame. "Retail price $485, I murmured without meaning to. Emma's smile widened. "Worth every cent. It makes me feel powerful every time I wear it." She clutched the notebook tighter, her voice faltering with emotion. "You don't know what it means to women like me. To see fashion that isn't just fast and disposable, but something that stands for values. You inspired me to apply to design school." For the first time all afternoon, the table was silent. No dismissive chuckles, no knowing glances, just the weight of Emma's sincerity filling the air. "I've actually applied to intern with your company 3 times, she added, nervous again. "I know the competition is brutal, but I just wanted you to know. Even if I never get in your work, makes me believe I can make a difference too." A tightness gripped my chest. I remembered being her age, stitching in a cramped apartment, believing maybe 10 people would care about my designs. And here she was, proof that someone had cared. Proof that it had mattered. Email me directly, I said softly. Include your portfolio. We're always looking for people who care about the mission. Emma's eyes went wide, her lips parting, as if she wasn't sure she'd heard me correctly. Really? Oh my God, thank you. She fumbled for her phone, hands shaking. Can I get a photo? My classmates won't believe this. I nodded, and she snapped a quick selfie of us together, her face radiant. Thank you, she whispered again, before backing away, almost floating toward the exit. When she was gone, silence reclaimed the table, but it wasn't the same silence as before. Something had shifted. Catherine cleared her throat delicately, but her eyes betrayed unease. So, you do have some kind of following. Some kind Patricia was already scrolling on her phone, frown deepening with every swipe. She has nearly 300,000 followers on Instagram. She held her phone closer, her voice tightening. And wait, there are articles. Business of Fashion, Women's Wear Daily, Vogue Business, Brittany Ward, the quiet revolutionary reshaping sustainable luxury. My mother's glass clinked against the table as her hand trembled. What she whispered, reaching for Patricia's phone with a speed that betrayed panic. There are dozens, Patricia continued, scrolling faster. Here, Fashionista Refinery and The Guardian. They're calling her one of the most innovative designers of the decade. Diana leaned forward. Why didn't you tell us? I did, I said simply. My voice felt steadier than it had all day. You just didn't want to listen. Catherine was staring at her own phone now, her eyes widening. Oh my God, she breathed. The new Vogue issue, look at this. There's a preview on their website. I knew what she was about to say. I felt the shift in the air before the words left her mouth like a storm cloud finally breaking open. You're on the cover. Mom froze. Patricia angled her phone toward the table. And there I was, on the glossy digital mock-up hair, pulled back minimal makeup, wearing one of my own designs framed by fabric rolls in my studio. The headline, The New Guard, Women Rebuilding Fashion from the Ground Up. The blood drained from my mother's face. For the first time, she had no words. The air around the table thickened, every polished breath suspended as the Vogue preview glowed on Patricia's screen. My own face stared back, poised, unflinching, framed by the very fabrics I'd built my life around. Mom's hand trembled as she reached for the phone, her manicured nails clicking against the glass. No, she whispered. This must be a mistake. It's not a mistake, Patricia said quietly, eyes darting between us. This is Vogue. They don't put hobbyists on their cover. Catherine leaned closer, almost as if the screen itself might bite her. It says here she's one of 6 women chosen for the most powerful women in fashion issue. Brittany, this is extraordinary. Extraordinary. A word I had never once heard my mother use for me. Mom shook her head, her voice rising. You're telling me my daughter, my Brittany, is on the cover of Vogue Impossible. She would have told me. She wouldn't keep something like this from her own mother. I swallowed, forcing my tone to stay even. I did tell you. 4 months ago, when the editorial team first reached out. Her eyes snapped to mine wide and almost frantic. You said something about Vogue, yes, but I assumed you'd been scammed. You always exaggerate. I told you they were planning a cover shoot. You laughed. Said it was probably some small online blog pretending to be Vogue. I don't remember that, she muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. Her friend's silence pressed in around her like a judgment and heavier than mine could ever be. The memory cut through me anyway, me standing in her kitchen voice, alight with cautious hope, telling her about the Vogue call, and her laughter, brittle, dismissive, ringing in my ears like glass shattering. Vogue would never feature a hobby business. That day I'd swallowed my hurt and said nothing more, and now here it was, undeniable on the table between us. Diana was scrolling frantically now, her nails tapping against her phone. It says here, oh my God, they call you the future of ethical luxury. They're projecting $8 million in revenue this year. $2.5 million net after payroll and expenses. Catherine gasped softly, looking up at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. $8 million. Yes, I said simply. Mom's face had gone pale, lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Her hands trembled so badly she set Patricia's phone down before she dropped it. Brittany, she whispered, voice cracking, if this is true, why do you dress like that? Her eyes swept over my hoodie, my sneakers, the outfit she'd spent the last hour using as evidence of my failure. Because I value comfort over appearances, I replied. Because I spend my days in a studio working with patterns and fabrics. Designer suits don't make sense there. But you could afford them, she said desperately, as though clinging to the one remaining thread of her argument. I could, I admitted. I choose not to. Silence. Even the waiter hovering nearby seemed frozen, unsure whether to refill glasses or retreat. Mom looked down at the tablecloth, her voice almost inaudible. I thought I was protecting you, all these years. I thought if I dismissed it, you'd eventually give it up and find something stable. I studied her, the woman who had raised me, whose approval I had chased like oxygen, whose dismissal had weighed heavier than any critic's review. Her confession wasn't comforting. It only confirmed what I'd always suspected: she had never once truly believed in me. And as her friends exchanged uneasy glances, I realized something else. This wasn't just my reckoning. It was hers. Because the people she had spent years impressing were now watching her face crumble under the truth she couldn't control. The storm had broken, but the humiliation was only just beginning. The stillness didn't last. A ripple passed through the dining room, subtle at first, a few heads turning whispers, brushing across linen tablecloths. Then a voice rang out from a nearby table. Is that Brittany Ward? I felt dozens of eyes land on me at once. Someone lifted a phone, the glow catching the sharp angles of my Vogue cover on their screen. Gasps, murmurs, then a chair scraped back. Two women approached, tentative but brimming with excitement. We're so sorry to interrupt, one of them said breathlessly, but we just had to. We love your brand. We've been customers for 3 years. She held out her phone, showing a photo of herself in one of my early dresses. Her friend nodded eagerly. Your designs changed the way I think about clothing. Could we get a photo? I stood slowly, feeling my mother's stare burn holes into my back. Smiling for their cameras, I answered their questions about upcoming collections, sustainability goals, the new fabrics we were testing. My voice was steady, professional, the same tone I used at industry panels. But inside I was trembling. Trembling because the recognition, the validation had always existed. Just never here, never in my mother's world. When they finally left, glowing with gratitude, I sat again. The table had shifted. Catherine's fork lay forgotten on her plate. Diana was staring at me as though she had never truly seen me before. And Mom's mascara had begun to run streaking down her cheeks. I didn't know, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Brittany, I didn't know. A bitter laugh escaped me, sharp as broken glass. You didn't want to know. Her eyes snapped up, wounded. I was trying to protect you. By humiliating me, my voice rose despite myself. By telling people I was unemployed, by offering me interviews for administrative assistant positions when I was running a company with 34 employees. Brittany, for 6 years, Mom. 6 years you dismissed me. 6 years you told your friends I was directionless, a dreamer wasting my life. Do you know what that felt like? To work 16-hour days to build something from nothing, while the woman who raised me told the world I was a failure. Her lips trembled. I thought you'd get hurt chasing a fantasy. I thought if I kept you grounded. Grounded, I snapped. You buried me. You buried me under your doubt, your disdain, your constant need to control the narrative. And you did it publicly, over and over again. Around us, silence thickened. Other diners had stopped pretending not to listen. Waiters hovered awkwardly, unsure whether to clear plates or flee. My mother's friends shifted uncomfortably, their practiced poise crumbling under the weight of the scene. Diana set down her napkin gently. We should give you two some privacy. Catherine and Patricia nodded, standing quickly, retreating without meeting my eyes. Their heels clicked across the marble floor like an exit drumbeat, leaving only the two of us at the table. Mom's shoulders shook as she wept, mascara staining her napkin. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have listened. Her vulnerability should have softened me, but instead it sharpened the ache in my chest. Because the truth was, it wasn't ignorance that had hurt me most. It was dismissal. You should have respected me, I said quietly, even when you didn't understand. You should have asked questions, visited the studio, listened, instead of laughing. You didn't have to believe Vogue. You just had to believe me. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. I love you, Brittany. I always have. I just wanted you safe. I let her hand hover there, inches from mine, but I didn't reach back. You love the version of me Vogue confirmed was successful. But you didn't love me 6 months ago when I was doing the same work, fighting the same battles, building the same company. That's not love. That's conditional approval. Her sobs deepened, shoulders curling inward, the proud posture she always carried, collapsing in on itself. For the first time, I saw her small, not the sharp, commanding woman who had dictated my life, but just a mother drowning in regret. And for the first time, I wasn't begging for her to see me. I didn't need her to. The dining room had gone hollow. My mother wept silently across from me, but I had nothing left to give her, not comfort, not absolution. Just the truth, and she had heard it. I stood chair scraping against the polished floor and walked away. For once, she didn't call after me. Outside, the sunlight was blinding the autumn air crisp against my cheeks. My phone buzzed nonstop in my pocket, a steady vibration that made my hand ache when I finally pulled it out. Notifications stacked one after another, texts, emails, Instagram mentions, industry contacts I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly remembering my name. The Vogue cover had gone viral. I paused on the sidewalk, scrolling through headlines, the quiet revolutionary Brittany Ward reshaping fashion. Vogue's sustainability. Cover goes global. Images of me, my studio, my designs, my words about purpose over prestige, shared across thousands of feeds. A text from Maya, my best friend, saw the cover. "You look like a goddess." Also, that quote about your mom, savage. Proud of you. How are you holding up? How was I holding up? Vindicated? Yes. But raw, too, like a wound freshly exposed to the air. It had taken Vogue to prove what I had known all along, and the cost of that was heavier than I wanted to admit. I typed back quickly, "I'm okay, just processing. Come by the studio tonight, I need you." Brooklyn was alive when I reached the studio. Lights glowed in every window, shadows of bodies moving frantically inside. I pushed open the door and was hit by a wave of chaos phones. Ringing printers, spitting invoices, fabric bolts rolled onto tables. "She's here," someone shouted. My team erupted into cheers, applause, even a few tears. They crowded around me, showing me screenshots, congratulating me, laughing with disbelief. "Have you seen the numbers?" My studio manager gasped, shoving a laptop toward me. "We've had 40,000 new followers since this morning. The website crashed twice. Pre-orders are through the roof." I hung my jacket on the rack, grounding myself in routine. Have we maintained production standards? Yes. We're not accepting orders we can't fulfill ethically. But the wait list has grown by 8,000 in just a few hours. Good, I said firmly. Then let's figure out how to scale without compromising our supply chain. Conference room, 5 minutes. They scattered energized. I followed, slipping into leadership as naturally as slipping on a well-worn coat. The adrenaline pushed me forward, even as my chest still carried the weight of the country club scene. Around the long wooden table, laptops glowed as spreadsheets and charts filled the screen. "We need careful ethical scaling," I said, scanning the projections. "No shortcuts, no exploitation. Our values don't bend for viral moments." Nods circled the room. Someone passed me coffee. Another handed over updated numbers from Portugal. We strategized for hours how to increase capacity without compromising quality, which new suppliers met our standards, how to manage cash flow during the surge. It was work, real work, the kind I loved. But every so often my phone would buzz with another message. From a former Parsons professor, "Proud of you, Brittany. Always knew you'd change the industry." From an investor I'd turned down 2 years ago. "We should talk again." And then from Mom. "Your father and I would like to take you to dinner this weekend, to celebrate properly and to apologize properly. Would you be willing?" I stared at the words, heart tightening. Apologize properly. Did such a thing even exist after 6 years of humiliation? I didn't answer right away. By the time the meeting wrapped, the chaos outside the conference room had only intensified. Orders pouring in, interns fielding customer service calls, fabric samples scattered across tables. My team, my real family, moved like a single body, carrying my vision forward. And in the midst of it, I felt both proud and profoundly alone. Because what good was vindication if the one person I'd wanted it from had never believed until the world forced her to? When the meeting finally broke, I lingered in the studio, walking slowly between dress forms draped with unfinished pieces. The familiar scent of fabric dye and machine oil grounded me. My team was buzzing, laughing, full of adrenaline. But under my pride for them, there was a hollow ache I couldn't shake. Mom's text glowed on my phone screen, "Dinner this weekend. To apologize properly. Please." I typed, erased, then typed again. "Sunday, 6 o'clock. You choose the restaurant." My thumb hovered. Then I added, "But this isn't about Vogue. It's about you respecting what I've been building all along. Can you do that?" Her reply came within minutes. "Yes, I promise. I'll spend all week learning everything I should have asked years ago." I put the phone away without answering further. Promises were easy. Living them was harder. Later on the subway home, I leaned against the door, exhausted but restless. Across from me, two young women huddled over a tablet. One gasped and turned the screen toward her friend. My own face stared back the Vogue cover, the bold headline. Their eyes darted up, widening as they recognized me. "Are you— Oh my God, you're her," one whispered. "Brittany Ward." I nodded, offering a small smile. "Your story is incredible," the other said, her voice trembling. "The part about your family doubting you, that hit so hard. My parents think I'm crazy for wanting to start my own business, but seeing you, it makes me believe I can." I studied her, remembering Emma's shining eyes at the country club, remembering my own nights alone at a sewing machine, wishing for someone to say those words to me. "Are you passionate about it?" I asked. "Completely." "Then trust yourself," I said. "Validation will come eventually, but it won't mean as much as you think. The real validation is waking up every day to work on something you believe in." She blinked rapidly, nodding. "Thank you. I needed that." As the train screeched into the next station, I stepped out, the roar of the city wrapping around me like an embrace. I walked the familiar blocks back to my apartment, the same modest one-bedroom I'd kept since the beginning. I could afford something grand now, but I liked the simplicity, the reminder of where it started. Inside, I made tea and sat by the window, watching Brooklyn's skyline pulse with life. My phone buzzed once more. A message from my old professor at Parsons saw the Vogue cover. "Always knew you'd reshape the industry. You stayed true to your vision. That's real success." I set the phone down and exhaled slowly. Real success. It wasn't the Vogue cover, though, that was extraordinary. It wasn't the viral headlines or the sudden reverence from women who'd once pitied me. It was this, the steady hum of my studio, the hands of my team on fabric and thread, the community of strangers who believed in what we were building. It was knowing I had stayed true to my values when it would have been easier to give in. Mom would need time to learn that. Maybe she never would. But for the first time, I wasn't waiting for her belief. I already had mine. And that, I realized sipping my tea as the city lights flickered, had been enough all along.